So, last week I reviewed the new Teen Titans animated film, and I used a couple clips from that movie in order to demonstrate my points during the review. And it took YouTube all of 24 hours in order to copyright claim that video. So, it looks like today, as I review Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I'm not going to be able to use any clips from that film in order to demonstrate my points. So instead, I will be using clips from the porno spoof, Guardians of the Galaxy. No law against that. Suck it, YouTube!
You might know me by another name, Starla.
You know what, on second thought, I might not get in trouble for using clips from a different film in order to talk about this film, but I'm not really gonna like myself in the morning if I do that. So instead, how about I just sparingly use a couple of clips from Guardians of the Galaxy, and we all just hope that YouTube is cool with that. Are we alright, YouTube? You guys gonna be fine with that? Okay, so today we're talking about... Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron, Professor Thorgi, and welcome to another episode of Thorgi Reviews, the review show where I tackle everything from the world of geekery, and today we're talking about this summer's biggest release. I am talking, of course, about Bahubali 2, The Conclusion. I'm kidding, obviously, and my apologies to everyone out there who is watching this in the future and has no idea why I just made that joke. No, today we're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and this is a big moment for Marvel because the original Guardians was one of their most unique films and one of their most successful films, so this is their moment to prove that they can capture that magic a second time. Also, it's their moment to give us something to take our minds off of Iron Fist. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way right now. I like this film. I think it's good. I think it's a fun time at the theater. I totally suggest everyone goes out and sees it. I did, however, have some problems with it. I had a few nitpicks, which of course in internet speak means I hated it. I'm just kidding. As I said, I did really like this film. However, most of the stuff that I liked about this film is the exact same stuff that I liked about the first film, so it's kind of hard for me to come in here and compliment this film when I have already complimented the original film for the exact same things. But just to get it out of the way real quickly, this movie is really funny. It's super imaginative. The action is great, and this is one of the most creative space universes I've ever seen. I love that Marvel has all this stuff working for them, but they're not just gonna sit back and go, you know what, all this stuff is good, all we gotta do is just put this movie in space, bam, Marvel magic will take care of the rest of it. No, they're actually working to make this one of the most creative space adventures I've ever seen. This is a film that if you have not been following any of the other Marvel films, you can watch this all on its own and just enjoy a great space fantasy story. And I really have to applaud the star of this film. But the star of this film, it's not Star-Lord, it's not Rocket, it's not even Baby Groot. The star of this film is all these characters interacting together. I've always said that the most important thing about writing a movie about a team is the interactions between those team members, and this film does that right. Because every time these characters interact, they make those characters better. Rocket by himself is good, Rocket interacting with Yondu is great. Drax by himself is funny, Drax interacting with Star-Lord is hilarious. And speaking of the characters, Yondu has now gone from being a supporting character to basically being an actual member of the Guardians himself, and Nebula has now taken on more of a central role as well, and we are also introduced to newcomer Mantis. Now, I'll go ahead and admit, when I saw that Yondu was going to be joining the team, I got a little bit nervous because I loved him as a supporting character, but I didn't know how I was going to feel about him being a main part of the team, but he nails it. He actually provides a lot of depth to this movie, and Nebula actually provides a ton of heart to this film, which if you saw the previous film is not something I was expecting to say. And Mantis, I think she fully deserves to be a fan favorite character. Mantis is innocently charming, she's funny, she serves a great role on the team. I really want to see what they're going to do with that character in the next film. And also, she's very different. I know a lot of people who have been criticizing this film for being too much like the last one, but Mantis is a completely different character, and that's another thing that I have to applaud this film for. There are so many characters in this movie, and none of them feel like rip-offs of each other. None of them feel like they just copy and paste them. Everyone is their own unique dynamic character that is nothing like anyone else in this film. That is a very hard thing to pull off with a cast this big. And I also really have to applaud the villain in this film, Ego. Now, for anybody who was paying attention to all the press and interviews and trailers leading up to this movie, then you already know that Ego is Star-Lord's dad, and that's perfect casting. Not just because Kurt Russell is playing Ego, and Kurt Russell is the perfect choice to play Chris Pratt's dad, not just in this film, but in all films, but also because Kurt Russell really captured that sense of swagger, that sense of charm, that, well, for lack of a better term, ego that Star-Lord had in the last film. So when you look at this guy, you instantly go, yeah, that's Star-Lord's dad. I totally buy that that is Star-Lord's dad. So yeah, I have to applaud them for that, but I also really want to applaud them because, listen, I love the Marvel films, but I will gladly admit they have a problem with their villains. Their villains are not that memorable. But in this film, Ego is memorable. He has a presence. He has a threat. He has a motivation. He is the villain trifecta. But okay, those are most of the positives I have for this movie. Time to get into the nitpicks. And as I said, most of these are just nitpicks. I don't really have any huge complaints with this movie, other than the fact that they keep trying to shove the Gamora-Star-Lord relationship down our throats. Guys, you have a lot of fans of the Guardian films, but I guarantee if you ask those people what they loved about the Guardian films, none of them would say Gamora and Star-Lord hooking up. Nobody is coming to this film to see the ongoing will they won't they relationship between Star-Lord and Gamora. Stop trying to give us that. Nobody wants it. Anywho, aside from that, most of these are just nitpicks. And my first nitpick is kind of a weird one, but let me explain. This didn't really feel like another Guardians film to me. It felt more like a really good season finale to a Guardians TV show. And part of that feeling comes from the characters themselves. Because the characters in this film, they don't really feel like the characters from the last film. They feel more like caricatures of those characters from the last film. Like, I know that this movie was written by the exact same person who wrote the last one, but instead it just felt more like a really good fanfic to me, because the characters in this movie, they're not really progressing like they were in the last film. They're more of just being the thing that we liked about them in the previous film. And I'm not saying that they're not growing. There actually is growth in this movie. Nebula and Gamora actually have a really great moment together. There's a really strong moment between Drax and Mantis. There's a really good moment between Yondu and Rocket. There's a really good moment between Star-Lord and his dad. But that's all they are. Just little moments here over the course of 2 hours, and in the rest of that time, they're just kind of being that thing that we all knew they were in the previous one, and because of that, it doesn't really feel like they're advancing. It doesn't really feel like they're growing. In the previous film, it felt like every single time that they went to a new location, every single new interaction that they had with each other, these characters were growing and changing as they came together. Whereas in this film, it just kind of has more of that tone of, hey guys, this week on Guardians, and next week you know they'll be back to being the exact same way that they were in this film. And another reason why I say this feels more like a TV show than a movie is because in the last film, it was this big epic journey going from place to place with all these different things happening, meeting all these different characters. In this film, they fight a monster, crash land on a planet, get picked up by Peter's dad takes them to his planet. That's kind of the rest of the film. And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen in there, and I'm not saying that there aren't other plot points that I'm kind of skimming over in there, but fact remains, this is a much simpler story than the previous one. And also, a lot of the stuff that made the first film unique is kind of just thrown in here in a, hey, we know you like this kind of way. Like the soundtrack. The soundtrack in the first one was phenomenal. Every single song was placed perfectly where it needed to be in that movie. In this one, the soundtrack's still great. I still love all the songs in here, and there are some songs in here that do serve a very important purpose. However, there are also a lot of other songs that I don't remember. They kind of just put them in there because it was like, yeah, we know that you guys want to hear these songs. In fact, they even stopped the movie a couple of times to go, so we're going to listen to some music right now, right? It really did kind of feel like they were just going, we know you guys like the soundtrack, here you go. Kind of like they would do in a TV show adaptation. Kind of like in a TV show, they would go, well, this is what worked in the movie. Make sure we let people know we're going to try and do that again. Same thing goes for all the 80s references. In the first film, all the 80s references really gave this film an identity and really helped to capture a tone for the whole film, but also let you know where Star-Lord was coming from. It helped get you inside his mind. In this film, don't get me wrong, there are some 80s references that are great. There are a couple of jokes referencing the 80s that land firmly. But there's also a ton in here that are just kind of thrown in here because, hey guys, you liked it in the first film. Now, I fully understand that part of the reason why I might be saying this is because that first Guardians film was a total surprise. I did not go into that film with any expectations, and I was blown away by it, so going into this film, the bar has been raised, and I do have expectations. But even realizing that, I still think that this film falls into a couple of the, hey, let's just do this all over again traps that a lot of sequels fall into. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like this is Iron Man 2 or Thor 2, but it's also not Winter Soldier. Although it is closer to Winter Soldier than Thor 2. I will gladly say that. But even with all my nitpicks, I still think that this film is really fun. I think that is another strong addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it also does a great job setting up the next film with all the little Easter eggs in there. I might have had some problems with this film, but I am really looking forward to Guardians 3 with where this film ends. And speaking of that ending, holy cow, I might have criticized this film for not having enough growth in it, but the end of this film has a ton of growth, and it gets super emotional. I actually started getting a little bit choked up at the end of this film, and it's because of that my opinion of this film gets elevated from simply being, yeah, it's fun, to actually being something special. And because of that, I give this film 8 out of 10. That's it for me today, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you like this review, then make sure that you click that subscribe, click that thumb up, and share these videos around the web. It is the best way to help this channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this Guardians film, and you can also contact me on Twitter and Tumblr at Professor Thorgi. And if you want even more from me about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I did a spoiler talk that is already up, and you will be able to click on that in 5, 4, 3. Bye, everyone!